So according to my clock here, it is 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Tuesday, March 25th, 2025. And we are going to have our second IU forum, basically going over information about the Ohio IU program and the rules that are coming out and are going to be effective here in a few short days, April 1st, 2025. Um, and I know we had sent out invitation to folks in the manufacturing side of things as well as building departments and their enforcement personnel, which may include some third-party inspectors. So, as I mentioned before, this program is being recorded, and we will be putting it up on our board's webpage like we did the other one a couple months ago. And folks can go back and take a look at that. I've actually had some folks call me up with questions about what they heard, which is good. It's helped us kind of refine some of the information that we're giving and maybe expand on some. So that's kind of nice. My name is Jay Richards. I am a registered architect. I am a construction code administrator for the Ohio Board of Building Standards here at the Ohio Department of Commerce. And I am the board's designee for administering this program. I act sort of as the building official for the program. I have staff that helps me. Some of them are on the call today. Bruce Culver is Assistant Construction Code Administrator, and he helps me a lot with the day-to-day operation of the projects. We have 3 plans examiners, 1 full-time and 2 intermittent plans examiners. They have done a yeoman's effort and have made, at least according to our records, a significant dent in our timeframes in terms of responding to applications and plan reviews, which has been one of the criticisms that we've had. I'm going to try and move through the first part of this presentation because it's a lot of slides that you've seen from the previous one, although there's a few with some more information. So I will kind of slow down there a little bit, and hopefully we'll get to some more of the helpful hints and tips for making submissions. And I believe at that time, probably there will be some questions from our manufacturers. If you feel the need to ask a question, please feel free to do so. Get our attention by raising your hand, and we'll have probably Bruce watch out for that and let me know that there's a hand raised out there on the side. So anyway, I was reading a chat message there. All right, so how about on with the show? Maybe before I start, does anybody have some initial questions that they want to ask or want me to cover before I start moving through the slides? Seeing no hands, I am going to proceed. Industrialized units and why we have rules for them. They are those assemblies that are constructed off-site, so they're not available for local building departments to do in required inspections. And they are composed to some degree of closed or concealed construction. So even when they do arrive on site, those required inspections are would require damage, destruction, or taking apart disassembly of the unit in order for that required inspection to occur. So the Ohio law has created the authority and responsibility for the Board of Building Standards to look at industrialized units and develop an authorization process for them. So we've done that, and we've had it for several decades, and it's been historically in the Ohio Building Code. And because of the growth of the program and the number of projects that are making use of industrialized units outside of the Ohio Building Code, we felt that it was important to be looking at them as kind of their own thing. And we have established a set of Ohio administrative codes that are dealing specifically with industrialized units. And we have taken rules that we've had in place and policies that we've had in place, and we've incorporated them all together in Ohio Administrative Code 4101:10-1-01 through 4101:10-9-01. If you went out to the Ohio Administrative site and you looked for those, you would see that the rules are there, but there's nothing in them. The publication of those rules or the posting of those rules won't occur until April 1 of this year. So looks like we have a question there. Mr. Nethers?
Yes, just wanted to get a little clarity on what's defined as an industrialized unit. Like, for instance, our company tends to think of this in terms of a complete building, but could it also pertain to like a prefabricated construction assembly, something that like a EMP might be fabricating offsite and then bringing in, or maybe some sort of skidded assembly?
It can. It really has those two criteria to it. One is it is made off-site, so away from the site of intended use. It's going to be transported across the public way to that site, and there is some level of closed or concealed construction. If you have a electrical wiring system involved that has conduits and boxes, and you've pulled conductors and you've grounded and bonded everything, you've devised it out, you've put the cover plates back on, that technically is closed construction. For the local building department, for their ESI, their electrical safety inspector, to do the required inspections he needs to do, he would have to have someone take those cover plates off to be able to inspect that stuff. So it could be as simple as that for it to qualify under the industrialized unit program. There are ways to do that. For example, if you did not device out, you could put the raceways in, you could pull the conductors, and as long as you left it open and you didn't put the covers on, it could still be inspected to the degree it needs to be inspected at the site of intended use. So there's variations there. We also look at modules that are either made in volumetric form, or they might get approved as a volume for their ultimate placement, but they might get shipped broken down so it's more convenient and then assembled at the site of intended use. So it does not necessarily have to get shipped in the volume that it was approved as. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that helps, but it actually makes me ask another question.
Okay.
Seemed like maybe you're just talking about electrical stuff and leaving covers off boxes, but what about insulation inside of a wall?
Yeah, so insulation is a required inspection, and if you put a finished material over top of that insulation such that the inspector at the local jurisdiction can't see the labeling on that to know what's in there, concealed construction. So there are other examples. I was really just picking up on one that tends to be the most common one that we see. And people have often tried to describe a situation where everything's exposed, so therefore it's not concealed. But it's, to them, it just means that the conduit is on the wall, the boxes are surface hung, and that kind of stuff. And we're still concerned and interested in the stuff that's inside the conduit and inside the boxes that could be concealed.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good question. And we get, so back to the slide, basically, we get our authority to write those rules from Ohio Revised Code under 379104 and 378110. And basically, how do they work? Is that we're codifying the process that we have used for many decades to be able to evaluate a proposed IU design for safety, sanitation, energy efficiency, and accessibility, where that IU is intended to be included as part of a building. We have had this graphic in our Board of Building Standards documentation for a substantially long time to kind of show how the column on the left is project designed by an owner at the site in the local jurisdiction. Those are the steps that they go through. And this is to illustrate what happens when they want to bring an IU in. That column on the right is the IU design and the IU process that the manufacturer goes through with us here at the board and our program to get the IU approved to be incorporated into that on-site building. So historically, the column on the left is the actual building. That's what the owner is going to end up with at the end of the day and get the certificate of occupancy for. And it is regulated under either the OBC or the RCO by a local building department or the local building official, the local AHJ. The column on the right is the column dealing with industrialized units. And that's what the industrialized unit rules that Ohio Administrative Code 4101:10 set is for. And it has us, the Board of Building Standards IU program, as the AHJ for that process. As I look at it, our jurisdiction is the manufacturer's plant. Once that work leaves the manufacturer's plant, it's now going to travel and eventually be on the site of intended use, and that's going to be in the local jurisdiction's authority. One of the things I try to do here is kind of maybe put a little different graphic together to help explain some of this. So sort of that the top part of both columns is the process of developing design documents, uploading them, reviewing them for code compliance, and code compliance is going to be represented by the authorization there. This is all work that the Board of Building Standards does with our plans examiner crew, and we're looking for code compliance. From there, it moves into the actual build operation or the assembly at the manufacturer's plant, inspections, getting to the placement of an insignia on the modules so that then they can be transported to the site of intended use. And that's going to be really the oversight there is going to be the third party inspection looking for code compliance that it was built and its quality assurance programs of the manufacturer work to make sure this is what gets assembled at the plant matches the authorization of those set of construction documents. So it kind of the flow kind of works this way. Registration happens, there's an application made, documents get uploaded, there's a plan review process, and then there's a question of whether it's we can issue an authorization or not. If we cannot issue an authorization, some form of correction letter or adjudication order goes back. This is the iterative process, part of the process. Documents get modified, answers get provided to the issues of non-compliance. Those issues get re-reviewed. We don't re-review the whole thing, just those issues. And then if the questions are answered, authorization is issued, and that is the manufacturer's license to build multiple copies of that same design. So then it moves into the plant. They can start building that stuff. Third-party inspector has certain inspection responsibilities. Once all those are complete and they're satisfactory, insignias can be applied to the unit and it can get transported. One of the things I did is I said, kind of keep this picture in mind. A lot of the things are the same. We use slightly different terminology on the owner's side, and that's what this is. This is kind of that plan approval inspection process for an owner to go through to get their building approved. And this is all through the local AHJ. And there's plans examination part in the top and an inspection part on the bottom. They make an application. Design documents get submitted. They're reviewed. Can an approval be issued? Meaning, is it code compliant? If not, they go through some kind of correction letter, adjudication order process. Documents get adjusted, more information gets added, questions are answered. Those things are reviewed, and then once all those questions are answered, approvals are issued, and that's the owner's license to build their building on the site of intended use. And where owners are intending to use an industrialized unit, part of the construction document requirements is that they need to include information about the fact that they are intending to install an industrialized unit as part of this building. So they can start that construction. There's a list of required inspections that come with that approval. Those inspections get done by the local building department. Once all those inspections are satisfactory, a certificate of occupancy is issued for the owner to be able to occupy that building. And that allows them to make use of that building. That includes the installation of an industrialized unit. So you can see that the processes are very similar. We were trying to be intentional about that, because we're complying with the same set of codes, those same requirements, it's ultimately going to all end up as part of a building. We wanted to keep those processes as similar as possible. So this is a flow chart that I developed to kind of sort of help me understand sort of where it all comes from. We have Ohio law over here that gives authority and responsibility to building departments, the Board of Building Standards, and actually has assignments to owners if they're looking to, or requirements for owners as they're looking to construct, that, they have a process to go through, and ultimately what the owner wants to end up with is down here, a certificate of occupancy, that what he's proposing to do is safe, unsanitary, energy efficient, and accessible. Now, along the way, he has to make sure that he's using either listed and labeled products or alternative materials or an alternative engineered design. But the model codes don't really take into account, at least not yet, they're working on it, sort of that concept of offsite construction, these industrialized unit models. So what Ohio has is we have this box outlined here in the middle, which if you are offsite construction and it's closed and you're submitting for an IU, you get to the IU program, And we go through our plan approval process. We have approved plans. The factory works on constructing it. There are satisfactory inspections. If everything's good, code compliant, built to the drawings, insignias are applied, and the unit can be shipped out and started to be incorporated into the construction. And ultimately being part of a certificate of occupancy, or building with a certificate of occupancy. This also represents some things that are incorporated into the rule that talk about, you know, what happens if an industrialized unit, I'll kind of coin a term here, ages out. In other words, it was made but never set, and it's 2 years past its valid authorization. You don't lose that investment as a manufacturer. That now becomes an example of an existing building, and it can be set as a relocated existing structure. Same thing with once a building has been issued a certificate of occupancy, now it is part of an existing building, and it can be and will be treated as a relocated or moved existing building. So the board has the authority and responsibility to write the Ohio Building Code, the Mechanical Code, the Plumbing Code, the Residential Code of Ohio, and we also have now this year for the first time the actual Ohio Existing Building Code, and we have these new IU rules at Ohio Administrative Code 4101:10, and the primary focus there is looking out for safety, sanitation, energy efficiency, and accessibility of buildings. We have organized the rules in 10 chapters. I know it's 10-1 through 10-9, but you'll notice that 10-4 has an 01 and an 02, and I'll get into that when I get there. So we have title and scope, definitions. Chapter 3 is going to talk about the manufacturer's participation. Chapter 4 is the authorization process, both of them. Chapter 5 is construction documents. Chapter 6 is about transportation. Chapter 7 is relocation and reauthorization. Chapter 8 is about fees, and Chapter 9 is about third-party inspections. Under the admin rule, it's basically what is the scope of these rules, what's in, what's out. There's some exceptions in there. We talk about our intent. We talk about our jurisdiction and what is the board's role, and I've gone over all that already. Definitions. The one thing I didn't really talk about, I talked about what an industrialized unit was and closed construction, and thanks for the question, Jay. And industrialized units are actually, in our mind's eye anyway, they are a portion of a building. The building is actually the thing at the site of intended use that meets all the requirements of the building code, from the peak of that ridge to the bottom of the footing, and has a certificate of occupancy or is entitled to a certificate of occupancy from the local building department. There's approvals, authorizations, and insignias. Those are things that talk about, is this code compliant, and was it built in accordance with those approved documents that are code compliant. There are a couple of definitions that are unique to IUs. We have this concept of a mate line because IUs can be large, and they could be made up of multiple modules or panels. And where those modules or panels connect together, we call that a mate line. And whether it's module to module that's under the authorization made for the design, it would be an intra-connection. And if it's between the IU and any on-site construction necessary to accept the installation, that would be an interconnection. And again, talked a little bit about how these can be modules. These could be panels, and we've also introduced a unit that is an equipment unit. And while there's not a huge distinction today with equipment units, I think there is some opportunity down the road for some development of the equipment unit to be far more useful in terms of code compliance. And I think if we have any of our generator manufacturers on board, you might know what I'm talking about. So Rule 3, this is about manufacturers' participation. So it's going to be about requirements and the rights that you have to participate. So the first thing starts with registration. This is something that you'll have to do. This gives you access to our program, and it requires you to provide us with some information, identify your third-party inspector, and agree to basically have a plant evaluation done. Authorizations are going to be required, and they are received by submitting construction documents through the IU portal. Inspections are required, and they are going to be done at the plant, and they are going to be through contract with a third-party inspector. And we have kind of 3 levels of inspection intensity, I guess. One is the initial phase, where you would be required to do the most inspections. Then there's an opportunity, should your inspections indicate that your quality assurance is sufficiently good, that the third party can recommend that you go on reduced inspections, which includes a self-inspection option that is audited by the third party. And then if unfortunately there gets to be problems with the quality assurance and IUs are being shipped out that do not meet the authorization requirements, then you may have to go back on increased inspection requirements. We've also recognized that there may be value in allowing for remote inspections. So for those manufacturers that are working with third parties that have a remote inspection procedure, that is available through these rules. Insignias are required. You acquire the insignias from us. They get placed on at the factory, and there's essentially an expiration date on the insignia, and that is when the certificate of occupancy for its first occupancy is issued. It ceases to become an industrialized unit and just becomes part of an existing building, and in Ohio gets treated like any other existing building. We also talk about orders. So if there is issues of noncompliance, we'll either issue correction letters or at the request of the manufacturer, we'll issue an adjudication order. And that usually happens because the manufacturer wants to appeal that order. There may be a difference of opinion about what the rule's actually saying. They want to make their case in front of the Board of Building Appeals. And we have that option open and available. We've had a few manufacturers take advantage of that when we're in situations where the industry is moving faster than the building codes. And while we may not have the authority to approve something, it's possible that the Board of Building Appeals can with enough additional information. Manufacturer's registration, kind of already talked about this, so I'll just kind of go through it fairly quickly. We did identify that the board does have the ability to suspend a manufacturer's registration for having a habit of not responding, not building in accordance with the authorizations, not following the rules in 4101:10. So again, more detail about the actual authorization process. You're uploading construction documents, you're paying a fee, you're filling out a form. You'll identify whether you're complying with the Ohio Building Code requirements if you're producing an IU for a non-residential building, or if you're complying with the Residential Code of Ohio for industrialized units for residential buildings, 1, 2, and 3 family dwellings. So we have there's on the submittals, the content is going to really be covered in 4101:10-4 subparagraph C. So what the kinds of information that we need addressed in the submitted documents is going to be there in 10-4 subparagraph C. The organization of that information is going to be over in Chapter 5 or Rule 4101:10-5. And this is really a little bit more of a recommendation. It talks about the process. It is an iterative process until compliance is achieved. We have opened up through Rule 10-4-02 an alternative authorization process. And this is where a local jurisdiction can request from the board on a limited basis the authority to conduct plan review on the part of the board's IU program for a specific development project in their jurisdiction. We currently have one jurisdiction that has gone through this, and they have been granted that authority. They're down in southeastern Ohio, and they're going to be working on a hospital project down there. There are some others that are interested. We have yet to receive applications from those local jurisdictions. If this does happen, the owner of those projects, as well as the manufacturers, who may participate in that, will receive notice that there is a local building department that would be doing plan review. Inspections are required, and this is where you find out what the required inspections are. Then we go into the inspection process. There is an initial plant evaluation, and the initial plant evaluation can be done as part of the first required inspection for any approved IU, industrialized unit. I already talked about going to reduced inspections. I always talked about having increased inspections and remote. Got a little ahead of myself there. There is responsibility on the communication side to keep record of the plant evaluation and the inspections, and the plant evaluation summary needs to be sent to the Board of Building Standards. These are essentially responsibilities of that third party inspection entity. They're going to be the record keeper. They're going to be responsible to send that plant evaluation summary to the board. These are the stamps that you would receive on your construction documents that you submit. We have the 2019 residential code for IUs being used in residential buildings, the 2024 Ohio Building Code for buildings going into non-residential buildings or commercial buildings. We also, because we have an overlap or a grace period for those industrialized units that were produced under the 2017 Ohio Building Code. If they have a stamp on them like this, they are valid as industrialized units through February 28th, 2026. We had a a 1-year grace period from when the 2024 OBC was first effective, which was March 1st, 2024. They could continue to get authorizations for, or they could continue to produce industrialized units until February 28th, 2025. So that period is over, where you could sort of start the construction of an industrialized unit. Then from March 1, 2025 to February 28th, 2026, you can complete the construction of that, and you can go out to a jurisdiction in Ohio and be set as an industrialized unit. But once February 28th, 2026 passes and we get to March 1, 2026, anything with a 2017 OBC stamp on it is going to no longer have any value as an authorization of an IU, and those insignias that are tied to that are going to change from industrialized units to existing buildings. They can still be set, but they're going to have to be reviewed by the local department as a relocated, moved structure. The reason for the grace period was to allow manufacturers and us to be able to make the transition from the old code to the new code and give reasonable time for that transition to take place. So most manufacturers that are wanting to continue with models into the or under the 2024 OBC should have already made their applications and updated their documentation so that they have no break in service or no break in the ability to continue to produce a particular model. And that grace period ended March 1st. Starting March 1st, 2024, any applications that come in for non-residential buildings are reviewed against the 2024 Ohio Building Code. So this one. So as I mentioned in the authorization under Rule 4, this is where you will see the content for things and the content requirements. And the significance in all of this and preparing these documents is so that we have some really good communication happening between the manufacturer and the owner, purchaser, installer, the Board of Building Standards IU program, as well as the local building department, local building official. Everybody has a role relative to what the manufacturer is producing, and it starts with the manufacturer. The extent to which the manufacturer wants to produce something will establish a scope. The owner is going to have to kind of make up the difference between that and what's needed for a completed building at the site of their intended use. So they need to know that scope. The Board of Building Standards and the local building department need to know that scope because we don't want to look at the same thing by two different entities. You don't want the same thing to be looked at by two different entities. So the clearer you can make that delineation, the better off everybody will be. We'll look at the stuff that's being produced in the factory. The local jurisdiction looks at the stuff that's being installed at the site. So started talking a little bit about this, sort of that efficiency, that clarity. We need to know what is proposed by the manufacturer, the materials, components, the systems, the standard, the quality, location, how much of this building that the owner wants to build are they producing in the factory. And we're looking for the impacts that it has on safety, sanitation, energy efficiency, and accessibility. That's what the rules are all about. And then that communication between the two authorities having jurisdiction to enforce the rules of the board or the building codes in the state of Ohio. So in the process, again, in chapter 4, there's an application that's made. Yeah. We again identify the applicable codes. The submittals are checked for compliance with those codes. That review is an iterative process. You can either be compliant right out of the chute, or you may be non-compliant, and we have two responses for issues of non-compliance. A correction letter is the most common, and it's just a communication to try and get more information and help us find where the information is located. It might be there, it might be an oversight on our part, might be an oversight on the manufacturer's part. It's all about keeping that communication going and finding those answers. Or in the case of where a manufacturer may want to appeal an issue, we can issue an adjudication for them. Once compliance is achieved, authorization is issued, we stamp the drawings and we lock them. Once the fee is paid for any additional review time, the manufacturer will have access to those stamped and locked authorized drawings. Already talked a little bit about the alternative review process. So in the submittal, this isn't really about the content. This is in Rule 4. This is what we'll cite if we can't find some stuff from general information on the cover sheet. This is sort of that design criteria, the scope of the project, get us oriented. If it's a real complicated building, we may need some kind of key to help us navigate through the building. The first thing we're going to look for is the structural part, that what's holding it up, what's keeping it together, what's resisting the loads imposed. What are those materials? What are the details? How does it maintain its integrity? What is the load path? And then once you have that structure, now you're starting to look at those fire safety systems, because I have a structure, now I have people in it, now I have to be able to get those people out. I need to be able to slow or stop or compartmentalize the spread of fire and smoke. There may be some other life safety features that come into play depending on the occupancy that IU is going into. What are those various protection systems? How is that IU addressing the risks presented by fire? We'll look at accessibility if accessibility is necessary. We'll look at the various building services. We'll look at the sanitary services, the plumbing. How does it comply with the Ohio Plumbing Code if it has any plumbing systems provided in it? Environmental conditioning, if it has any heating or cooling systems in it, how do those HVAC systems comply with the Ohio Mechanical Code? Electrical wiring systems, same thing. They'll be evaluated against NFPA 70. That's referenced out of either the Ohio Building Code or the Residential Code of Ohio. We'll look at energy efficiency and how that works. One note here, you always have the ability to comply with the prescriptive requirements. So you just put the tabular value of thermal insulation in, and you put your air barriers in, and you do that stuff. Or if you want to do some kind of alternative trade-off or performance, in that case, you would need to also include a COM check or a res check for alternative, like the trade-off part. Or if you're relying on a simulated performance or an ERI performance evaluation, you would need to include those tools to show how your IU fit into that, so that the owner knows what they need to provide on the back end to finish that off and be energy efficient. And then also we're looking for connections, those inter and those intra connections, intra between the modules themselves, inter between the module and any on-site construction. So the process of inspection, there are required inspections. There's the plant, there's a rough-in inspection for structure and building services. There's a weather inspection for those units that are proposed to stand outside. If you have an interior unit, there's an exception for that. Insignias of subassemblies. So we have some situations where manufacturer A builds an IU and they have an insignia on it. It gets transported to manufacturer B. They add to it and they have their own approval and their own insignia. So the third party will look for that first insignia. The local jurisdiction at the site of intended use is only going to look for that last insignia, the latest insignia. If there's any testing required, those reports have to be audited, that they were conducted and satisfactory results. And then a final inspection, basically everything's closed up the way it was supposed to be. And then on-site inspections are really more focused on those inter and intra connections and make sure we have those identified. This is a picture of the insignia that we issue, or at least it's the one we currently do. We are in process of getting some new ones. They're going to have some new branding and slightly different language, but they're basically the same as this. As I mentioned before, Rule 5 is recommended organization. It's an attempt for us to try and get some standardization into this process. With more standardization, there can be more efficiency. We start off with things like on the cover sheet. We want to see that design criteria, those design assumptions, any limitations. What is the scope of work? We've worked to establish a scope by category on the scope of work, and I'll go into that here in a little bit. An index of the sheets that are included in the drawings, and if necessary, some kind of orientation so that we can understand how big this industrialized unit is and how the modules fit together. So the scope of work and the buckets. This is going to be determined by the manufacturer, and there's 3 scopes of work. There's the scope of work that everybody's used to. It's that factory assembled part. This is what the manufacturer is proposing to provide. That's what they're putting together in their plant. I'll jump down to category 3. This is the other bucket that you've heard us talk about in the past, and that is, what does the owner need to provide to complete this installation at the site of intended use? Oftentimes that's going to be things like foundations and utilities, but it can be far more than that. We have some manufacturers where the owner is providing all the exterior siding. They might be providing the roof covering. They may be doing some of the insulation process. Then that middle bucket, this category 2 bucket, is going to be a new one. It's a little more refined, and this is going to work with options that we are hoping to make available to manufacturers to make their authorizations a little more robust. And that is, these are going to be things that the manufacturer has designed. They have submitted them to us for approval, but they are not necessarily installed at the plant. They may be shipped loose items. They may be, I'll say this, well, it'll be incomplete in some fashion. So We'll look at it. We'll put it in our scope of authorization, meaning it's compliant with the building code. If it's installed the way it shows on the document, it is then going to be up to the local building department and their inspection to look at it and make sure that all that loose stuff gets installed at the site per the instructions that are sent as part of the authorization. And that's really how it breaks down in these three buckets. We have category 1 is approved by the board and inspected by the third party at the plant. Category 2 is approved by the board, inspected at the site of intended use by the local AHJ, and the third category is approved and inspected by the local AHJ. This is all an attempt to kind of get past any duplicates in reviews, plans, examinations, and inspections. So it gets looked at once and by the appropriate jurisdiction. I think we talked a lot at length about a lot of this stuff, but basically the design criteria, you're identifying the codes and the conditions that are applicable. We want to see what those scope buckets are. We need an index of what's supposed to be included in the documents that are submitted through the IU portal for us to review. You'd be amazed at how many times either there's additional sheets and additional information that's not in the index or vice versa, and it helps us understand the scope. Again, identify whether you're going into a residential building or going into a commercial building by identifying either the RCO or the OBC on the applicable and current edition. The modules, panels, or the whole unit, identify whether this is a single unit or multiple modules. We're really looking at kind of this kind of content and these kind of categories, and we want to kind of punch up the connections. The mate line, identify where they are, help us understand whether it's an interconnection or an intra-connection with the detailed information. Like, for example, on the manufacturers that are not putting any kind of exterior siding on, they kind of have a mate line at the outside of their building. The owner has to finish that off with something to protect it from the weather. And in most cases, in all cases, there needs to be evidence of responsibility of who produced the drawings. And then, of course, the authorization is going to be evidence that it is compliant. So I was just looking at ways to kind of also describe the various rules that we had put together. Coordination with multiple authorities having jurisdictions, Rule 1. The beauty in Rule 3 is one of them is that with one authorization, you can have multiple reproductions of that same module. Also in Rule 3, we have some inspection and authorization flexibility. Rule 6, you'll find it's a transportation chapter, but part of that is where you'll find shipping reports requirements. So when you apply an insignia as a manufacturer and when you transport that, you'll have a responsibility to fill out a shipping report and upload that through the IU portal. That shipping report is the tool that ties together the authorization with the insignia number, with the serial number on the particular IU module, with the site of intended use. Certificate of occupancy is issued by the local AHJ for the building. That includes the installation of an industrialized unit. Once that certificate of occupancy is issued, it becomes an existing building. And that's clarified in Rules 3 and 7. Relocation and alteration is in Rule 7. We've added an option in Rule 7 for those manufacturers that have like a leasing arm where they have produced units that are leased to folks for a couple years, and then get returned to the leasing agent to get leased to another. If they choose and they don't want to transport it and do all the changes as a moved structure, and they have the facility back at their leasing yard, they can make application to do alterations in their yard, get it reauthorized as an IU and sent back out. Fees are in Chapter 8. We did not change our fees. Our fees are still $135 for the application, which includes the first hour of plan review time. Additional hours of plan review are billed at $100 an hour in half-hour increments. So if we use an additional hour and a half beyond the initial application and 1 hour of review, we would send an invoice for $150. Third-party inspections, Chapter 9 talks about the fact that to be a third-party inspector, you either have to have a valid Board of Building Standards certificate as an inspector, or you can have an ICC inspection certification, and you have to have taken the exams or the tests for the building systems that you have a responsibility to inspect for that manufacturer. There are 4 exams. There's building, plumbing, mechanical, electrical. If you take all 4, you can do all of the inspections, and they break them down between residential buildings and commercial buildings. So if all you're doing is residential buildings, it's 4 exams. If you're doing just commercial buildings, it's 4 exams. If you're doing both commercial and residential, there's potential you have to do 8 exams. So I summarized the helpful hints in the first go around, and I'm going to go into some greater detail on those here. Does anybody need to take a break? We're about halfway through. I can take a break or I can keep going. I don't see anybody needing a break, so I'm going to keep going. So in summary, these were kind of the key takeaways we had to in talking with manufacturers and our experience in doing plan reviews. What are some of the things that have slowed down the process or been barriers in the plan review process that have added to time and didn't need to. So, on knowing the applicable codes and standards, this helps to be, well, you need to know which code is applicable and what the effective date of that most recent code is. So, that's where you're going to find the enforceable requirements. And it's going to be determined by the date on the application of the authorization and the effective date of the applicable building code. So, if you're residential, you're looking at the Residential Code of Ohio. If you're non-residential, you're looking at the Ohio Building Code. And the current enforceable versions of each of those were effective July 1, 2019 for the residential code, and was effective March 1, 2024 for the commercial code. So if you submitted an application for authorization today, you would be needing to comply with the 2019 Residential Code of Ohio for residential building, or the 2024 Ohio Building Code for a commercial building. All other applicable codes and standards that are referenced from those two codes. So if you had a question about, I know people in their design assumptions, they put a lot of information about the various codes and standards that are referenced out of these two codes as what that went into their design assumptions for how they designed the industrialized unit. If you need to know what those are, you find that information out by going into that current code, like in the 24 Ohio Building Code. You go to the one and you look at chapter 35 of the 24 Ohio Building Code, and that will identify all the codes and standards, and it will identify the effective date of that code or standard right in chapter 35. In the Residential Code of Ohio, it's in chapter 44. Another thing that seems to take some time, and the best way I know to clarify it is that all buildings have an occupant load. In my world, no building has an occupancy of 0. It's not an unoccupied building. Yes, it can have limits and controls about how many people can go in there and things like that. But once you build a building and you go looking for how many people are in it, it always generates one, at least one. All buildings resolve loads imposed to supporting soils. So when we're looking at an industrialized unit, we're looking at what part of that load path is that industrialized unit, is receiving loads from somewhere else and they're transferring through, and what can that maximum be? If it all starts with the industrialized unit and it needs to send that load on to some on-site construction, or maybe another module in the case of having stacked modules, what is that load resolution? What is the resultant there that needs to get passed on to the next thing? We need to know that. Building owners need to know that. Excuse me. And the last thing, we want to really, again, reinforce that on the cover sheet, that's where we need to see these design assumptions, and they need to be based on an identified applicable building code there on the cover sheet. If we get submissions today that have, we're going to comply with the 2017 ODC, we're going to have a correction item that needs to get corrected before we can issue an authorization. And it's unfortunate. The rest of it could be perfect, but that reference is problematic. So be clear, and this is really about avoiding that duplicative process, that review process, that inspection process. We really only want to do this once. The simplest method that I can come up with about this is the manufacturer only puts in their document what they are proposing to assemble in their factory and provide it to the owner. It seems pretty clear. We'll review all the information that's there, not anymore because it's not there, not any, well, we'll review what's there. I do understand and I do grasp the concept that sometimes context has value, and that if it is necessary to put context in, or you as the designer or the preparer of the documents feel it's necessary to have that context in there, even though it's not provided by you as the manufacturer, do your best to differentiate that part of the IU, or what differentiate that part from the IU assembly. Identify that it's by others. If you can identify which others, whether it's an owner or another IU manufacturer, which would be an odd case, but it does happen. Yeah, you can try to do that. We've had some manufacturers produce that context in a more transparent tone, so that kind of fades in the background. We've had others, you can kind of block it out or black it out. That kind of takes away some of the value that it would have had. But just think about that in when you're drawing these things and trying to communicate them, so that we're not looking at something that you're not intending to provide, and then we spend a lot of time looking at the code compliance of it to find out that you're not actually providing it as part of the IU. Always show those mate lines. Identify them in all the views where they show up, where they have meaning in that view. I'm not going to be sort of super critical if it's showing you information that has nothing to do with the mate line, and the mate line may be in some of the more complicated projects, some of the mate lines line up and they stack up, and you can get all kinds of confusion there. But if it has value in that view to help us orient ourselves to where we are in the building, those mate lines do a really good job of helping us understand where we are in the building. The faster we can know where we are in the building, the more quickly we can move through those plan reviews. Remember to create those lists of the portion of the IUs that are assembled at the site, where they're just inspected by the local AHJ. That's that bucket 2. And then there's that bucket 3, which is the work required by the owner to be able to install that IU. And that's going to be work that they need to get taken to the local AHJ, the local building department, and have it approved and inspected by the local AHJ. We think we recently had a manufacturer call us and say they were trying to have a unit installed, and they were turned down by the building department. And as we were digging through it, it sounds to us, we still have to confirm this, haven't had it confirmed yet, but it sounds to us like the purchaser didn't do this last bit of work, like didn't provide how did it connect to the ground, connect to the adjoining structure, how is it getting its building services provided to support. It had some building service needs to support its operation, and none of that information was provided. So we think there was a little miscommunication there that caused some issues. Update. This one's going to be pretty quick. On the boilerplate specification and standard stuff, particularly if you get a correction item on it, do a little bit of quality control and get the construction document information up to date. The other thing that we run into is sometimes boilerplate specifications are coming from, they've been attached to a project coming here to Ohio, and they reference codes in Florida or California or some other states, Texas, sometimes from some northern states, but rarely. So watch that boilerplate language that you might be having in your construction documents. And probably the worst example we've had is the same manufacturer would submit us construction documents, and we would get out the first correction letter from the last review, and the first 12 items were duplicated on the correction letter for this one because they were the same and they were all boilerplate comments and they were never updated and they were never changed. So they just copy straight across. It doesn't take us very long to do, but it was mentioned once already. And then when you have to mention it again, now it has to go through another review cycle. Whereas if it were cleaned up, they might have been able to get an authorization straight through because maybe those 12 items were the only 12 items in the correction letter. So if you do use boilerplate specifications and standards and standard details, I would urge you to make sure that they're up to date. Maybe you don't check them every project, but at least on a regular rotation. Recommendation to follow Chapter 5 organization, particularly on larger projects. Bookmarks help us tremendously to move through those pages. Couple of things. Chapter 5 is just a recommendation. It's our effort to standardize the organization of this information, working towards efficiency. Again, it's not a requirement. You can locate information in places other than what shows in Chapter 5, but be prepared. There may be some inefficiencies there. If we're unable to locate it in a reasonable period of time, there may become a correction item on the correction letter, and the answer might be, well, go back to a page later in the set or a detail later in the set to find that information. And if that information's there, fine. We'll accept that information there, not a problem. But we're really trying to set up this notion of getting ourselves a roadmap through the information in these construction documents. We need a complete understanding of the IU, and we need to travel through it. And getting us that roadmap, it works really well. Mate lines are important for that. That's one of the fastest ways for us to understand where we are. Section and detail references, coming out of a plan, going to a detail, coming out of a plan, going to a section, coming out of a section, going to a detail, coming out of a section, going to from a building section, going to a wall section. Tell us where to go, where we're going to find more information. We understand that those things might be in there later in the set, but we don't know if they're at sheet A27 or at A101, or did that information get moved from an architectural sheet to a structural sheet, for example. If we have some idea of where to go, it helps us move through that set rather than try to flip page by page to find that information. This also bodes true for folks that might be using construction manuals and or system documents. I have an incomplete note. Again, bookmarks are useful, especially on those large projects. We get some projects through here that are 200, 300, 400 pages, and trying to move back and forth through that electronically is challenging. The bookmarks help a lot with being able to do that. Final comment on Chapter 5. We're not going to cite Chapter 5 as a non-compliance issue that will prevent authorization. We're going to cite something about content. We're going to look for some information on code compliance, not on organization. We may make some reminders that Chapter 5 is out there and that it'd be helpful if it was there, but it's not going to be something that's going to stand in the way from authorization. include reasonable options. This is something that we're trying to encourage a little bit to get those authorizations work more for you, instead of having to submit a whole new application for a small little change, a small little shift, some kind of detail. Good example are those mirror images. Doing that kind of that left hand, right hand. If you're doing the same thing and you're just flipping it over and doing the opposite view, you can have that included as simply as a note on your construction documents that mirror images of this plan are also being produced. Extended length of an identical structural bay. So if your structure is spanning, the 10, 12, 14 feet of a module that more easily transported down the public way, and you want to have versions that are 20 feet, 24 feet, 28 feet, and 32 feet, you can do that by talking about those different extended lengths. Give us some dimensions, some plan example of where that space occurs, that additional space occurs. You also have opportunity to provide discrete packages with clear limits and a choice of option. So in something like this is things like you're adding an exterior feature like a deck or a dormer or maybe some roof options. It needs to have kind of a clear delineation of where it is, the drawings that go with it to add it on, what needs to modify of the base IU approval to be able to put that on, and then some indication that the particular purchaser of this model, or for purposes of just having a stock or an inventory, we're producing this model with the optional deck. Check a box, check the mark, so that everybody knows that maybe modifications need to be made to that base model IU to be able to accept that deck. And oh yeah, we need to go look at the deck drawings to understand how that deck is being constructed and what the materials are and what the fasteners are, and those kinds of things. The other thing is considering some scalable solutions. We have some manufacturers that do real basic rectangular buildings. They have an end cap that they indicate could be mirrored. So now they have two end caps, and then they have filler modules that go between. A lot of times they're primarily open on their long end walls, and they just add together. A purchaser may need 2 end caps and 6 fillers, 1 end cap and 4 fillers because he's putting an addition on another building, 2 end caps and 2 fillers, maybe caps and 4 fillers, and one of those needs to be all of them are dry except one. I need bathrooms in it, so I need a wet unit. So there's ways to break down that industrialized unit to give you a lot of flexibility in being able to provide something to an owner with some very simple modules. Think about designs where you could develop a basic set of modules, a basic set of building blocks, if it were, and then you can recombine those into different configurations. And there may be some more value in that, when you're working with larger buildings, but it's all of one type. I think there's opportunities out there to do that. We're trying to work with manufacturers who are interested in doing that, breaking down their bigger IU design into the repeatable, duplicating IU modules. Finished materials, I mentioned this a little bit. You might have different options in finished materials. both interior and exterior. You might have the option that the owner is providing them. That's bucket 3. May have a mate line issue because they may need to provide more than just the finish. They may need to complete the insulation package, things like that. You could offer owners choices of things that don't have code compliance impact, color options, pattern options, other aesthetic kind of things. There are potentially choices that the owner can make that do have some code impact. A brick finish veneer is a lot heavier than a vinyl wall cladding. Are all the things in place to be able to do that? Is the to carry that additional load? Are the relief angles in place? Things like that. Is it a thin brick that just glues on rather than a full 3 5/8 inch mortared brick? Sometimes those are best handled with kind of that discrete package option. We are going to go back to allowing the development of construction manuals or systems documents. If you are a manufacturer that makes use of a tool like this and wants to make use of it with us, we're letting you know that construction manual or system document needs to be on file with the board. We will review that document only as referenced. So first and foremost, it needs to be identified on the cover sheet in those design assumptions that you do make use of a construction manual or a system document, whatever you call it. And then any internal reference, and by that I mean any references within what we're referring to as the model set that you submitted with your application for authorization, where you want us to go to the construction manual or system document for a typical detail or a typical reference. So we won't look at all of the stuff in there in that system document. We're only going to look as referenced out of the model document. We'll go to that location, we'll look at that stuff, and we'll look for code compliance. If there is non-compliance, or we just determine or believe that non-compliance exists in that construction manual or system document, we will cite that particular detail for this particular building or particular model is not compliant. There will be options to correct those items of non-compliance. You can either update the construction manual and refile the updated version with the Board of Building Standards, or you can update the specific information and incorporate that into the submitted set of model documents that came with your that you uploaded with your application. The construction manual system documents are not going to be done like they were in the past, where they were uploaded via the portal through an application process. We're going to, for those manufacturers that want to use this system, contact us. We'll work with you about doing like a file transfer protocol and get those files uploaded to us so that we have access to them for when we need that reference. Yeah, and you do need to, and I think this is a bit of a repeat, but you do need to identify the applicable construction manual or system document on the set of model documents, and they need to be made available to the plans examiners, which that's what we have with the having them on file with the Board of Building Standards. as well as the inspectors that are doing the work there in your plant as third-party inspectors. Any questions on that one? That one was probably a lot of the newest information that I had. Okay. So you got minor modifications that you want to make, work with us. We'll do our best. If you have a question, please just ask. Minor modifications are going to be specific to each job, and we're going to treat each job on a case-by-case basis. And when in doubt, ask. We're doing our best to keep up, and I think I owe a couple of people some answers, and I'm working on it. But that's what we're doing. I have done some evaluation of numbers, and while we're keeping a lot of our application flow is going through much better, our quantities are staying up, which tells me that we're processing more applications per given cycle. So the other thing is, take an interest. I know I've participated in some of the Modular Building Institute stuff. I have participated at the ICC, working on some various standalone standards for tiny houses and offsite construction. I know there's some proposals coming through in Group B for moving some stuff into or recognizing it more directly in the IBC. So those are all heading in the right direction to make this industry a little more prominent, I guess, in the building industry. We've added features to our IU program. We've resurrected some things we did in the past. We've brought some new things forward. This is all trying to modernize the program a little bit. We'll listen to any suggestions for improvement that you may have as manufacturers or building departments, building officials. We do have some new territory in our IU rules, and there is a lot of old territory. I know we keep referring to them as new rules, but the greatest percentage of them are rules that the industry is very familiar with when they work with us. Encourage everybody to participate in the code and standard development at the national level, but if all you have the time for or the interest in is working at the state level, please feel free. One thing to remember, code compliance, we're really focused on sort of that safety, sanitation, energy efficiency, and accessibility of the buildings that they're going into. So we want the IU to fit the building that it's going into or that it is going to be become. I was going to run through a couple of examples here real quick. Spray booths, they have a reference in the Ohio Fire Code under 54 or 1504.3.2.5, and we do not look at spray booths through the industrialized unit program. We have generator equipment where there's a skin around a generator, and it's pretty much skin tight. It has kind of reach-in access only. We look at this as equipment. We don't look at this as a building. So generally, this is regulated by the local building department, and they're looking for listing and labeling of this generator to an equipment standard. Conversely, we have submissions of generator buildings. And this meets the definition of a building for us. It does have floor, walls, roof, columns, foundations, with or without the other parts. And it is there to basically accommodate, house, protect the property of the generator. And it has additional premises wiring system going on inside. There's a little bit of heat provided in there. And so we do consider this a building. We do regulate it as a building. And with the closed construction that's represented in other drawings that this plan came with, excuse me, it is a good candidate to come through the IU program for consideration. In industrialized units, this kind of started addressing the open and closed question. Image over on the right is all fairly open. It may be finished on one side, but everything is you can see all kinds of the structure and what's going on behind the wall and the backside of the finish. That could be shipped as open construction to the degree I can tell from this limited picture. The picture on the right, they've started to cover up the piping with insulation, so we don't know what the material is there unless by chance there's something stubbed up out of the top. There's a potential that this might end up being closed construction. For sure, if you have the pipes in and you start insulating all that and you put finished material on there and you've closed up that wall, now you are in the closed construction world. Nothing stopping you from making units that stack, go up in the air, multiple stories. There's some pretty wild projects going on in Ohio with industrialized units. One of the things, about stuff like this, where you have multiple units, there's no way that the manufacturer can do the energy testing required to look at, leakage performance and stuff like that. So there are, for energy efficiency and compliance with the energy code requirements, there are some things that the owner is going to have to do to finish that. Industrialized units can be indoor. This one happens to be an indoor office complex. You do get relief from having to have the energy, the same energy efficiency requirements. You still have like the lamp efficacy minimums for the lighting that goes on in here, but you don't have the thermal barrier issues with an indoor unit like this one. You still need to have that load transfer though. That load path still needs to finish. Industrialized units up on rooftops. They can be standalone beside a building, up on a rooftop. In the case here being up on a roof, that owner needs to know what the load of that unit is to make sure that his roof structure can support it, transfer those loads down through the rest of that building. This was kind of an interesting one because in this case, this bottom portion was the industrialized unit and this top portion is all open. And so this was submitted to the local building department for site work, and then we looked at these bottom units for the compressor locations. It was always kind of a question to me, if we have three sort of identical boxes that have all the same basic stuff in it. Was there a way to look at one of these boxes and get an authorization? And they ended up making 3 of them with maybe some slight variation on this one wall, and then hooking them all together at the site. So one authorization produced 3 modified examples. It didn't go that way. It was submitted with one industrialized unit that was comprised of 3 individual modules. In a case like this might be a good example to also talk about. Each one of these modules is required to have an insignia on it because it will transport separately from the others. Each one has its own serial number. The overall thing, a duplicate of this, it's another whole unit with these 3 pieces in it. Relocatable structures. So yeah, you get the industrialized unit installed. It gets a certificate of occupancy as part of a building. It's now an existing building. The owner has to maintain it in accordance with its approval to maintain its certificate of occupancy. If they're making any changes to it, like a change of occupancy or altering it or putting an addition on it, they have to make application to the building department to get approvals for that as making those kinds of changes. The Ohio existing building code will regulate that for non-residential buildings, commercial buildings. The Section 113 of the Residential Code of Ohio will regulate that for residential buildings. If the unit is being moved or relocated, whether it's a single unit that's a standalone and you're going to pick it up and move it, or whether it's multiple units and you're going to move all the units, or whether it's a unit that got incorporated into a larger structure, larger building, and you're going to move some or all of it. You go to Ohio Existing Building Code, Chapter 14, Moved Structures, and that you end up having to comply with those requirements. And then if there are any repairs, alterations, or change of occupancy that's also being proposed as part of that move. So you pick it up from location A, you take it to location B, you set it down. The owner at location B wants to put 2 more offices in it, add a bathroom, maybe change the roof material. All those alterations need to go through the approval process with the local building department because they're alterations to a moved structure or an existing building. So the owner who is proposing to develop their property with a new building, and that building they intend to use an industrialized unit as a minor part of it, half of it, a major part of it, maybe almost all of it. They still need to go to their local building department, make application for plan approval. When they submit the documents, they need to indicate on those documents that they are intending to make use of an industrialized unit, provide some idea of scope of that industrialized unit. Before the unit arrives on site, they have to provide a copy of the BBS authorized construction documents to the building department, and they need to provide any detail information on the interconnection with any on-site construction that isn't already detailed by the industrialized unit manufacturer. And then, of course, any scope of work, any construction that they're wanting to do beyond the actual industrialized unit on their site of intended use. So this is the owner's communication tool that they need to communicate, and this has been in the code for a very long time. So it's nothing new. The local building department has inspection responsibilities relative to the industrialized unit. That unit arrives on site. They need to verify that it has valid insignias on each modular unit. And remember, I mentioned that back with those chiller with the compressor buildings. There's 3 modules there, and each one of those modules needs an insignia on it. They're looking to make sure that the IU matches the BBS approved construction documents, and that by that it's I mean in general design. It's not, going through a thorough check. It's like, okay, is this what this customer ordered, and these drawings match what they got. Verify that the connection, those connections to any of that on-site construction is one of the things that the local local AHJ has to inspect. So those interconnections between the modules and foundation systems, those intra-connections between adjacent modules, the completion of weather protection systems, if it's an exterior unit, the maintaining of fire rating if you have a fire rated assembly and there's a mate line that runs right up through the middle of it that needs to get closed to maintain the detail for that fire rating. If there are any utility connections, and depending on how the utilities transfer across mate lines, there may be some intra connections of ductwork or wiring or plumbing systems. Sometimes manufacturers keep all their wet stuff on one side of the mate line and they never have to cross it. So sometimes they'll put scope of work that does have to cross a mate line in the bucket 3 as the responsibility of the owner to complete that system. All that bucket 3 stuff has to go in that set of drawings that the building owner, the purchaser of the IU, has to submit with his drawings to the local AHJ for approval as part of the building. The other thing they're looking for is any damage that occurred during transport, install, or just poor weather protection. If there are any issues of non-compliance here in these 4 items, the building official for the local jurisdiction needs to notify the Board of Building Standards about that, so that we're aware. Anytime this has happened, that I've been in my position, the manufacturer has already been made aware, and they are already working on a solution to fix it, because it is the manufacturer's responsibility to deal with any damage that it's occurred from transport, installation, or poor weather protection. This has, at least in my tenure, this has not been an issue. Manufacturers are all doing really well towards getting good, solid products out there. Again, I've been talking about the mate lines. We have interconnections and intra-connections. This is, I'm going to say this is an example of an intra-connection. We have a module section over here. We have a module section over here. The 2 things are joined together. I'm not real sure how exactly they're joined together, so I thought this was a good place to, when you're detailing this mate line connection, there's some things to consider. It's like, where is the mate line in the detail? This one's fairly straightforward. It's probably right up through the middle between those 2 walls, but you could have them where they listed to, or they favored one side over the other, just because of how it's detailed. For example, particularly when you get to the interconnections. So like if If this is maybe more crawl space framing, or forget we have gypsum board down here, maybe floor framing, and there's a foundation wall over there that this sits on, and the mate line may be running horizontally, you're going to have different conditions on either side, and depending on who's responsible to put which last piece on. Is it at the bottom of the floor joist? Is there a sheathing piece that goes underneath there as part of the IU? So it'd be at the bottom of that sheathing piece. Not likely, but who has the sill plate on the top of the foundation? Probably the site does, but you never know. It might come on the edge of the IU. Don't know exactly how they would attach it, but that's, maybe they have a nifty little design. Which kind of mate line is it? Or which mate line is it? So, let's say you have 4 or 5 modules going in one direction and 3 modules deep. So you have let's say a total of 15 modules in this 1-story building. And you'll have mate lines that run in both directions. And you have a unique detail in kind of the middle of one condition. One of the easiest ways to identify where that unique detail is in the mate line is to, each mate line has a unique alphanumeric character, and you can pinpoint that intersection, or you can pinpoint that mate line with those alphanumeric characters. It's on mate line C between mate lines 3 and 4. So again, what type of mate line is it? Interconnection, intra-connection. Sometimes they might be fairly straightforward, fairly obvious. Other times they may not be. So what that really drives to then is what is the work that is occurring that's by the manufacturer? What is the work that's occurring by the owner or some other party at the site of intended use? So just some questions to ask and answer as you're thinking about when you're creating details at mate lines. What am I describing here? What is happening? What's going on? I still am a little bit curious of how does it all come together here at the mate line. But so I'm at my last slide, and I'm more than welcome to answer any questions that people have had along the way. I didn't see any hands raised other than there at the beginning, and I appreciate that both ways, that question was asked and hopefully answered, and didn't really have additional questions. So yeah, Mr. Stevens.
Hey, so I mean, my question is basically about changes and amendments. Is there an official process to submit any amendments? Our owner pretty much wants to change the building every other day, so.
Yeah. So we can do amendments, yes. We don't have, I mean, it's again going to be on a case-by-case basis. It's going to depend on the scope of the amendment, and discussions with you as the manufacturer, whether or not you want to change the authorization going forward, and everything you produce from that point forward is going to be with that new amendment, or whether you want to have options within the authorization, and whether we can do that as a discrete portion. Or whether it would just be better because of the scope or scale of the amendment to actually make a separate application and develop essentially a second model that you could produce. Yeah, is closely based on the first model. I think you're one of the people I owe an answer to, if I'm not correct, or if I'm not wrong. And I was thinking that yours probably fits, from what I remember having looked at, in the category of a discrete option. If we can get that, and I can reach out to you when I'm done here.
Yeah, that'd be good. I mean, my boss is on me, but
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. David?
Yes, I was just hoping you could repeat the part about the spray booths not counting as industrialized units. I was having a conversation with the plans examiner. We have a project where we have a large spray booth.
Yeah.
And it was kind of looking like they were asking for IU certification.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, that is not one that we review as industrialized units, because I believe it references that standard. I need to look that up a little bit more, if you don't mind. Is there a way I can send you some information, or I'm trying to think how to post information so that everybody gets it? I can probably figure that out. Sort of about the spray booth, but it has to do. It's been a long time since I looked through it all, but it has to do with the fact that they reference a standard and it gets built to that standard, so it's treated more like a piece of equipment.
And that's how I had definitely understood it as well. So there's kind of where my confusion was coming in at.
Yeah.
Okay.
If so are you with the building department, or are you with the design, or
I'm with the design team.
design team? You could ask the building department to call, and we'll talk about it with them.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. I think Jay was next.
Yeah, sorry if you've mentioned this already, but I may have missed it. But I thought at the beginning of the discussion you mentioned that the model code was they're working on some updates to the model code for offsite construction. I kind of want to know some more details about that and how to participate in I guess the open review of it.
Yeah. The thing that I am that I know the most about is ICC developed standard 1200, 1205, 1210, and those are some basic building block standards for the process of approving offsite closed construction through a process similar to what we have in the industrialized unit process, but it gives them a framework with which to develop that either at a statewide level or a more localized political subdivision level. And what has been proposed is like in I think it's chapter 31 of the IBC to recognize 1200, 1205, 1210 as standards for offsite closed construction. And then when you start going into those standards, you see that here's the process, and we have to develop some standards around it.
Okay.
So it gives a door. I don't have those code change proposals memorized, otherwise I'd give them to you. But they're in Group B right now, which is first committee action hearing is going to be here at the end of April.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Sam?
Hi, Jay. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
So my question's related to the three different buckets or the categories that you had described earlier in the seminar. And specifically category 2, the the assembly on site. I guess what if you had, if we had two identical projects, one being category 1, assembled or put together, closed construction, at the manufacturing facility versus, category 2, all the components are, put together in the manufacturing facility and then assembled on site. What I guess in terms of the drawings and the things that we send you, what is the difference? Are we including assembly instructions and things of that nature, or I guess what would be the difference, or what would you look for?
Primarily, it would be the detail of where those mate line details of where it goes together. What is that local jurisdiction going to see that comes together? That they're going to look for, is it welded connections, bolted connections? What is the fastener? How does that structural system get finished? If it is a fire rated assembly, what kinds of, it's all the stuff that would normally have to happen at a mate line. It's the information is going to vary depending on what the thing is, and if you have a like a through wall BART unit that's being shipped on the floor, that we've approved it for heating and cooling of the unit, but it still needs to get picked up off the floor and installed in the hole that was pre-made for it, and flashed off and supported and wired in and plumbed and ducted. That's going to be a different bit of information. But it's what, if you want us to approve it and the local jurisdiction only inspects it, you need to provide us with the information to show code compliance and what has to be done by identifying bucket 2 in the field at the site of intended use to finish it. Otherwise, you could potentially park it in bucket number 3. We wouldn't look at it at all, and the local jurisdiction would be approving, like in the case of the BART unit, they'd be approving the unit, the installation, the plumbing, the connections, the weather tightness, all of it. So there's choices to be made on the part of the manufacturer.
Gotcha. So like, for example, if it was, we shipped, a floor, 4 walls and a roof down the road, and then the contractor handled all the components from there, that would be more like a bucket 3 situation.
How are the floor and wall components made? Are they closed construction?
Yes.
And then the
our situation.
And then the corners are just bolted or fastened together.
Yes.
To make the box. Okay.
Yep.
So I would say that's bucket 2.
Okay.
We've looked at the closed construction, and that's been inspected in the plant. The connections that remain are going to be made at the site of intended use, and they're going to be I'm just pulling an answer out of the air, the bolted connection or where they go together, and any kind of weather sealing that happens there. That just needs to be inspected by the local AHJ, that it was done in accordance with the drawings that were approved by the board. And that's bucket 2.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Nate?
Yes, my question is kind of similar to Sam's as well, where we're shipping modules and have closed construction modules and have porches that are getting completed on site, but we're providing the engineering and materials for them. We've been told in the past to completely omit them from our plans because they're getting completed on site. So like taking them off our floor plans, taking them off elevations.
Yeah.
And from what you were saying, it sounds like that might fall into, we could include them in your plans if we do like a bucket 2.
Yes. Yes, that's a perfect
Okay.
example of what I would consider bucket two, where you're designing it, you're asking the board's IU program for approval for code compliance. You'll essentially ship all the materials with the unit, and that whole thing gets assembled on site. That would be bucket two. If you took it completely off and you identified it that, it's at the exit door, and you identified that the owner in bucket three was going to provide a porch at the exit door as part of their work, they would design it, they would get it approved by the local jurisdiction. That would be an option as well, and that's probably what you were maybe pushed toward before, which we're giving you that intermediate step now.
Okay. Yep. That answers my question. Thanks a lot.
Yep, you're welcome. Any more questions from anybody? I still have 39 people on the call, and I don't see any hands raised, so.
Yes, quick question.
We have a question?
Yes,
Okay, go ahead.
want to add, I see it's being recorded, will this be made available publicly?
I'm having difficulty hearing you. You're muted if you're.
You
Nate?
can also ask the question in the chat if that's easier.
Oh, yeah, Bruce. Oh, there it is. Yes, we will. We're going to, at some point, I don't know exactly when, but we are going to post this on the board's webpage like we did the first one. So you will have access to it. We'll probably send out a notice like we did, and notifying everybody that this one was coming. When we put it up, we'll send out a note that it's available. Nate?
Yeah, another quick question. You mentioned about systems and quality control. Is there any benefit to us to go through that process if we're already doing like an individual submittal for each plan we're getting approved?
I don't know that I can answer that. I have talked to a number of different manufacturers. Some people use a systems document process and want to continue using it. I know of at least one manufacturer that used to use one and doesn't use one anymore because their business, I think it's more because their business model has changed. And so I think that's going to be something you'll need to investigate internally, and just know that we have the option to be able to make use of something like that. You will have to have quality assurance manual as part of your plant evaluation relative to, how you operate the plant to assure that the module as it moves down the line, people are paying attention to your policies and procedures are such that the right materials are there and available, that the employees are building it per the approved construction documents, and it gets inspected at appropriate times, and it essentially gets built as you said it would. So there will always be that. We're talking about something that you might want to file with us that has a collection of standard details that goes across your product line, if you will, that's used on all of them, and you want to just reference that rather than pull it out for each model that comes through. We're making that process available.
Yeah, that would work fairly well for us since we already have a QA manual and we use systems for several other states we build with. So
Yeah.
that sounds like a fairly a good solution, something that we'll check into. So thanks
Okay.
for that.
Yep, you're welcome. Sam?
All right, one more quick one. I'm trying to save you from a phone call. Back to that situation, we're shipping the 4 walls, the roof, and the floor down the road. And we're just providing that. The contractor's doing all the components and the mechanical, the electrical, plumbing, and everything. When we do go to submit that, then you're telling me you're just looking at our portion that we're doing in our plant. So do we need to include the components and things in the drawings and just state or depict whether or not they're being installed on site or not?
So for the authorization for your company, we would only need to know the information that the next party downstream is putting in relative to how it impacts it. So let's say you have a floor that they're going to put a really heavy piece on. I'm thinking generator, and we want to make sure that floor design is sufficient to hold that load. So a rectangle box with 12,000 pounds written in it would be sufficient to let us know that you've designed that floor to support that load. Other than that, it's all the normal loads that the structural system would have to resist, up, down, laterally, and assuming it's outside. And then live loads, dead loads. And then if it is outside and it's going to be conditioned space, now we're also probably, because it is sounds like the shell, we would want to know whether you're doing the thermal envelope, air barriers, water resistance, that kind of stuff, or whether that's outside of your scope and being added as downstream.
Gotcha. That clears it up. Thank you.
Okay. All really good questions. Appreciate the help. I see Bruce is helping me answer some questions that have been asked online in the chat there. So, okay, well, we are a few minutes past 3, and I believe we were scheduled till 3. So I don't want to keep anybody into other commitments. So appreciate all the time. Appreciate you listening to me patiently. Appreciate the answers, and we'll be doing this, I hope, on a more regular basis. Don't know when the next one will be, but we've been tossing it around whether we're going to try to do it every 6 months or maybe every 3 months, just kind of have maybe not 2 hours, but have some kind of forum where we talk about how our program is developing, what's happening, and if there's any changes. So we'll send out notices for the next one like we did this one. So appreciate it. Thank you very much. Everyone have a great afternoon.